Hello, welcome to our program, Violence Free World. My name is Kali Ikpe. I'm very excited, but don't worry, you know why in a very short while. My guest at the house today happened to be someone very interesting, a public affairs analyst. Her name is Joosie Itoya Splendor. You're welcome to the program, Joosie.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Good.
Well, we're going to come right back and continue with the conversation. But for now, our special report. Since independence, elections in Nigeria have been associated with volatility. This perception stems from the incidents of violence experienced during and after elections. The 1964 elections recorded violence in unprecedented proportions, resulting in widespread arson, looting, and killing. Similarly, in 1979, though with a lesser intensity, violence broke out at various locations across Nigeria in protest of the election results that announced Alhaji Shehu Shagari as winner over Chief Obafemi Awolowo. The casualty figure was minimal but will be magnified for the 1983 elections when Shehu Shagari again won re-election. A significant dimension to that election was what played out at the state level, particularly in Ondo State, when Chief Akin Omoboriwu was initially pronounced victorious over incumbent Governor Adekunle Ajasin, a decision that was later reversed by the courts. His supporters literally ignited the state while protesting the outcome of the election. 1993 was the next major election moment, and in a much more defiant and sustained manner, angry Nigerians protested the annulment of the election of Chief Moshood Abiola in the June 12 presidential election by the General Ibrahim Babangida-led military administration. The resulting political tension took over a decade to settle. Political analysts and pundits had from this legion of sad events begun to build predictions with a near sense of certainty that Nigeria's disintegration will happen in the not-too-distant future. The casualty figure that came with the 2011 elections led people in several quarters to assume a looming catastrophe could happen with the 2015 general elections. The D-Day finally came, replete with the usual drama of ballot box snatching, rhetoric of fury, and climaxed with the unlikely concession of victory by the incumbent President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan to opposition candidate Muhammadu Buhari. Interestingly, all of the palpable tension melted into wide jubilation and excitement. Many patriots have struggled with accepting this trend as part of our culture and would rather consider it an exception, hence the flurry of programs to change the orientation of the citizenry. Laws have been made to specifically deal with election-related violence and other forms of malpractices that promote violence. It seems, however, though, that the local political offices hold far overwhelm any sense of reason. Perhaps a deliberate attempt to make political offices less attractive may serve to reduce the incidence of violence during elections. Schools at our level, religious organizations, and the National Orientation Agency would need to redouble their efforts at getting the citizenry to appreciate that all elections can be credible and indeed violence-free. All right, Joosie, you've been here before, but not like sitting one-on-one with me like this, but we've heard your voice a lot of times here. Now, several things have happened. The Global Terrorism Index came up with what seemed like a bit cheering or encouraging, rather, with reports hinting at how death rates have decreased despite attacks increasing in rather some other concentrated places. That some things are beginning to happen, that there's a concentration in some places rather, and it's not as spread as it used to be. And even back home here, with the Boko Haram, there seemed to be some quiet. In the whole of 2021, only 64 attacks occurred. Death rate generally dropped by as much as 92%. Generally, given all of these situations, would you say there's any considerable improvement as far as insecurity in Nigeria is concerned?
Well, yes, it's to be expected. Naturally, for people who do intensive study of life and mankind, they'll tell you that the stages of life are divided into dispensations. And there was an era of fire, and that was the time of weapon where we had wars like the First World War, the Second World War. Now we are in the age of love, where people are beginning to talk about unity, talk about respect for individuality. So we're in an era where people are beginning to brew more on love and excitement rather than fights and get glory from fights. So the value is changing from that of the brave man is a man to be respected to the peaceful man is a man to be respected. So I believe that. But nonetheless, we are also in an information age where the slightest of events spreads fast. So you could be saying this by paper that it's reducing, but the average person out there who opens up his phone every day and is faced with one or two kidnap story that is still escalating in their mindset that this thing is not going anywhere. You understand what I'm trying to say? But in all reality, apart from the recent Russia invasion, I think I agree with that global index that it is really reducing. And then again, Boko Haram died when it was actually destroyed. What we had about with these bandits is pockets of reiteration. When these people left their base, they were scattered. And because of the fact that their food, their survival was hinged on that violence, so as they moved into their new places, they started exhibiting it. Meanwhile, they know that that was the beginning of the end. So it's just like you killing a serpent, and then you come back to see that it's dancing around. Of course, it's dancing, but it's dying.
Well, we definitely still have a situation in our hands to handle. Now, generally, what impact do you think this will have on the forthcoming elections? Things have not simmered down yet, and yet we're walking into an election year, 2023, and there's violence all over state. Yeah. How does this impact on the elections?
Naturally speaking, from 1960, you'd understand that the kind of electoral violence that was experienced in the First Republic down to this Fourth Republic is not the same. Now, Nigeria is a country that is built on, how do I say, supremacy of tribe. We are still in that dispensation of tribal men. And then when people believe that they own the right to defend their tribe, which is where they draw their identity from. But as we begin to we mature into our independence, we're now beginning to understand, okay, well, it's like we're one. And then with that knowledge, people begin to like, okay, fine, there's no need to really fight so much. But the problem we now have is that we have a government now who has actually brought back the divisive nature of the individualism of Nigerians and put it out there to you that, look, if you're not from this place where I am, you are not me. That coupled with the hardship is my major fear as we move into the next election. Because when you take everything from a man, you take his source of livelihood. And again, the problem is politics has become not just the source of livelihood for people, but their point of pride. And so the stakes are so increased in politics now that people can't afford not to win, especially in a political system where the winner takes it all.
That's scary. A matter of life and death. Yeah. That's what you just said.
Absolutely.
That's what politics is right now.
Yes.
Now, gross disenfranchisement or tacit disenfranchisement, or rather, you say lack of internal democracy in most of the political parties today, leading to a lot of people complaining very, very bitterly and being left. How much do you think this kind of tendency would do to promote stability? Do you think, are you one of those who think that this breeds violence ultimately?
Of course it does, one way or another. Maybe a lot of us have not understood that violence goes beyond just using your cutlass, I kill you or killing, no. We've suffered verbal violence. People have suffered emotional violence. Even recently, people have suffered what I call loyalty violence. They've been loyal to a system where it was young. And now that it's time for reward, right before them, you show to them that they are powerless by taking out that supposed reward. Now, there's something I tell people. Politics of Nigeria, now the desperation I'm talking about for survival, it's not just for the minute people playing politics, but for the main politicians themselves. Everybody wants to win. And because of that, you're only important to this political game when you are either the carrot or you are the stick. Now I explain. Your carrot means you are bringing in interest. Your stick means you have the ability to cause pain or you have the ability to reward. If you're not in that either of this, doesn't matter whether you spend 30 years being lawyer, you're not bringing value. So value around politics now ties around those two things, the carrots or the stick. So if it's either you have the ability, so that's where again violence comes in. So they say, okay, since we can't get it, let's go and fight. And if you look at it, just like I can cite the Niger Delta days of militancy, the guys that came out to fight were the ones that were sent abroad. The peaceful boys are still back home. So because of the fact that we work with these two tenets, if you're not rewarding me, don't threaten me, we begin to encourage violence without knowing it. Okay, these men pick up they killed a lot of people, raped girls, you call them, you take them to, you say you are rehabilitating them, they come out tomorrow wearing white. You call it amnesty? Yes, you call it amnesty. Let me even take the book, they come back tomorrow wearing white and you give them all those glory. What happens to their victim? You are nursing another cloud of violence that's going to take place soon. So we need to be able to understand how to treat this, because there are people who actually suffered from this. Are you thinking about them?
Somehow they say, when it relates closely to what you just said, when people pick up arms and take drastic actions, they tend to get results, get attention. And where it is leading us, when people believe that they need to talk this tough and invariably provoking others to go the same way, is a softer, in fact, it's a pre-violence kind of attitude, if you ask me. Then you told them, do their bidding, and they're fine. The ones that you do not, remain on fringes and keep fighting. So look, is this how we're going to remain? What does rhetoric of fury do to us, to our stability as a nation?
Well, you can tell that one of the major, with all due respect, even the government we have right now was built on the foundation of rhetorics of violence. And nobody actually called to say, stop it. Now, one thing I realize is that in terms of human development, the average African is still not there. It's still, first of all, it's still a tribal man. It's not yet a citizen. And so the first thing he considers is his immediate environment and his immediate needs, if you get what I'm trying to say. So now, having said that, they believe definitely, like I said to you earlier, it's a carrot or the stick, that for them to draw attention, they have to speak loud. That aside, we have in fact, the entire Nigerian citizenry is angry. And nobody's doing anything about it. Everybody's angry. And then you now see a man like Boho rise up and say, no, we won't continue like this. And they all see in him their anger. And that's the reason you see the masses are not, people like, I'm not condoning what they say, but I'm telling you why they are popular. Because they are representing the anger, the sad line, the society decadence, and the society, how do I put it now? When your society has failed you, they are seeing their expression in these people. And because of that, these men are going to be garnering support. A government that is in tune shouldn't always come and deny everything. There's a time you come and you begin to empathize with the people. I understand what you're going through. It's not all the time you take the highway. No, you are dealing with people, it's not machine. I don't know why, and we have a leadership that is still geared towards the ancient days where you have the king. The king is everything. Then, of course, you have, when you want to discuss with the gods, you have the chief priest. And when you want to go to war, you have the baloguns. We still operate in that kind of system. So it's the king or nobody else. So even driving this democracy into the average Nigerian or African is difficult because that is not our system.
Not just the sincerity or insincerity on the part of these actors is one issue, critical issue we have to come back and look at. But that's when we return from this break. I've been speaking with Joosie Itoya Splendor. I will be right back after this time out. Welcome back. I'm still here with my guest. And Joosie, just like we hinted at before we went on that break, sincerity or insincerity on the part of these major actors, including those who speak with fury, those who orchestrate violence, has been a thing of major God. They do these things and the people trust them, like you hinted at, rally around them. At the end of the day, they become just exactly like that same thing the people were fighting against. Just like in George Orwell's Animal Farm. You remember what happened there. Now, do you believe that politicians orchestrate violence just so they can benefit from it?
Well, it depends on the scenario. Now, I always say to people that power replaces itself. Power just changes probably a party or a personality. But power itself, especially when it has to do with interest, only just replaces itself. That's the reason why, like, according to George Orwell, they just tell you, okay, some come in the guys that, let's fight this evil government. But the bottom line is that they are interested in being relevant.
Using the people.
The people has always been the pound in the game. That's the truth, because when you say democracy, you mean the votes of the people. So you now begin to see people who are actually experts at being charismatic, at actually dwindling the people, telling them what they need. The people don't need much. For instance, I tell some people, you can't be explaining to me that there's power. All the people want to know is that when I switch on my light, there's power. That's when I know there's power, not because you're saying it. But then again, like I said, it depends on the ideology of the person ruling. Do you want to be a leader loved or a leader feared? You know, so it depends on the leader. Some want to be the leader loved. And you have leaders over time who have strong oratory prowess that can take the people through the journey of words and tell you, this is our war, this is about your father, this is seducing the public, this is what they want to hear. Then you now have the ones on the other side who believe that the people don't matter. You're here, you're the king. You know, so there's also the ideology of you are a leader or you are a king. Are you a ruler or a leader? A lot of people think leadership is about positional placement. It's not positional placement. It's much more than that. Now, how many of your politicians do you take through schools like that? All we know is that once the man is a king, he is the king. You're either the king or you're nothing. And when it's the king rules differently from a president. That's another thing we have not even been able to tell ourselves.
No, Joosie, you've hinted at something now.
Yeah.
It worries me sometimes too. Is it like at some point with some leaders, it is difficult to differentiate love from fear? Because sometimes they, as my Lord wishes, whether what it is that you want to say, what you've done is good or not as you wish, so let it be done, means that you're loved.
Yeah.
Or if you do not toe that line, some kind of things happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah, you know,
so how do you differentiate love from fear?
From fear. Yeah, well, that is going to be, I'll explain this in a generational way. Now, we are having a present set of what we call the Z generations and all of that. Now, these are the generation age that want to express themselves. But prior to that time, there are people who believe that the father ought to be afraid, ought to be feared. Once the dad says, go and get me that, you go and get me that, whether your leg is hurting you or not. And people come out from their home base right to post. They're just taking everything they have at home right to the office. Oga have spoken, Oga have spoken. You don't want to argue with the Oga. So people come to power with such mentality. You don't argue with me. Who are you to tell me this? Excuse me. The chief is talking. Now that's for a generation. Thank God they are gradually retired. So that is the problem we even have in Nigeria, because you have a new set of what we call the Sorosoke generation coming up now. They are an expressive generation. They want to ask you why.
Okay, what are you thinking about consensus when you say you don't argue with me? The boss has spoken.
Oh, the boss has spoken. Oh, even the Bible says where the word of a king is, there's power. And that's what they believe. The minute the boss says, this is my candidate, who are you? You know why? He has the power of the carrot and the stick.
Now, let's look at the role of the media in all of this now. We are supposed to be very neutral. How would you assess the performance of the media in the escalation or dousing of the tension? Remember, we are supposed to be neutral and at the same time also responsible.
Good.
Yes. So now take a look at this and see. Remember, we're also humans.
Absolutely.
Please give us an assessment of how you think the media have done with this war.
I think the media is still under the influence of all of us now hustlers. We're all hustling. The mainstream media, like we know it, is not the media of the days of Tale magazine, the days where we rush every week to go and get the truth of what's happening. Even though I have problem with that too, because the Nigerian media assume the chief prosecutor of the day government, because before we got our independence, we were fighting the whites to give us independence. So the media had always been anti-government.
Don't you think even that truth was subjective at some point, except that you did not know, you had not been exposed to what you are today?
Yes. Now, that's what I'm saying. The media has not really been giving the people what they want to hear. Though most electorates always want to hear that the government is actually not doing well because of the way they feel. You understand? But the media has not been able to communicate to readers the exact situation. You can balance the news. You can actually tell us that there's fire burning here. Right now, you can see that the fire service is here. We are afraid that 2 or 3 persons. You can balance the news. But when you pick up the papers, or now in Nigeria, you know there are certain television stations you go to when you want to hear from this side of the government. There are other television stations you go when you want to hear from the other side of the government. True or true?
Very true.
Good. Now, when they lost that, they gave it now to the social media. A lot of us wake up, the first thing we want to go to is Twitter. What's tweeting? Rather than pick the newspaper. My dad would naturally ask for the paper. But now in my time, I go to check what is being said in the Twitter before I ask, okay, what is on the headlines today? Now, they may not know it, but they are gradually losing value.
But even the Twitter, how safe is that?
That is where
you have manipulators there.
That is where the danger is,
yes.
Because the Twitter now has become individual press. A man just woke up from the morning, had a fight with his wife, is there, is just tweeting his anger, and it becomes an influence on somebody else. So you can see nobody's even actually like managing narrations. And then again, of course, the Twitter community, somebody can actually pay up to 200 persons sitting somewhere and speaking for a lie. And then, because that is where the source is coming from, it's being believed. So the media world, like you said, they should go back to the days of them being professionals. The brand envelope saga is moving. The guys have to pay bills. But where are we going to actually end all of this? Are we going to keep saying, oh boy, the reality is I don't want to be thrown in jail? You also know that at certain times they have also been threatened. The few of them that come out to say this is the truth, where are they today? Who is actually remembering them? There are people who actually participated in the NSAS that are still in jail. Nobody's talking about them anymore.
It's after a while, so...
The press is not even reminding the public.
Now, before we end this conversation, let's look at just what we can do to minimize violence being associated with elections. Now, the attractiveness of the offices, the elective offices, far overwhelms reason. If I look at what it is that I'm going to get here, is that I die or I get it. In the face of all of this, what would you advise, amongst other measures, to check this?
Like I said, it's actually a very, very sad situation going on right now. Everything, just everything. It's even in few cities like Abuja, you can see somebody say, I'm a banker. I have some certain, my salary and my importance does not come from politics. Go to the states. Virtually every state, if you're not a politician, you're nothing. You need your promotion, you need to know a politician. You need you need to be paid your gratuity, you need to know a politician. It's that intense. And now one thing with politics and life is that there are always two sides to politics. One side, if you're winning, the other camp is losing, right? Good. Now, if you're doing favor to a certain people, you're denying another set. Now, those guys you're denying get aggrieved. And then they resort to violence as well. Come on, we are Nigerians as well. So one major problem is, as people get into power, they should be able to understand that politics is not governance. We mistake all. Politics is when you sell your ability, your interest. And when you get on the seat, you are not just the president of a particular party. You're the president of even the people that didn't vote you. You're the president of the people that didn't even leave the house to vote that day. Now that you have won the elections, you have to rule. You now have to understand that you are now in charge of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Also putting in mind that you need to also return to power. So you now see the complexities of the whole thing. So for now, we need that president or that person. It's not just going to be one man's job. And that is why I fear. Because the society we live bring out our leaders. Our leaders are not from space. You understand that? Yeah, if you go for president, I know you, Uncle Kali. I say, yeah, definitely. If I sit with you, I say, please go, represent us. You know where you're from. But then, of course, all your friends say, oh boy, now our turn. You understand? Not good though. So when you say such statements, you're actually positioning them for corruption. And in our time, not good doll. So when people, you're going to see a lot of things happen. So it's not just a job alone for the leaders. It's also for the citizens. The whole thing. But then, everything we have to start from above. I think we need leaders that can talk and relate with the people. We need to have leaders that are human.
Well, Joosie, I think that's a very good point to leave it.
Thank you, Kali. I'm grateful.
All right, Joosie, I think that's it was a very, very wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to us doing the part 2 of this very soon.
Oh, my God. Well, I thank God.
All right.
Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with Joosie Itoya Splendor, public affairs analyst, journalist too, if you like. Same time next week promises much more if you endeavor to be here. But until then, please remember to remain on the road to a violence-free Nigeria. Thank you for watching. My name is Kali Ikpe. No more.